Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about net zero emissions and specifically how nature plays a crucial role.
Oh, yeah.
You ever get the feeling that like all these climate goals are just about, fancy tech and
Yeah.
cutting edge innovations? Well, we're going to talk about how the financial sector is starting to realize that there's no reaching net zero without nature's help.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We're talking about recognizing how interconnected our economic systems are with the natural world.
Okay, so to help us along the way here, we've got a really interesting paper that was just released this month from the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. You might have heard of them, GFANZ for short.
Yeah.
They're a coalition of over 700 financial institutions, from banks to insurers to asset managers,
Wow.
all committed to reaching net zero emissions by 2050. And this paper is kind of like their playbook for integrating nature into all of this. And one thing that really struck me when I was reading it was this bold statement that they made. There are SENO, net zero without nature. So I kind of want to unpack that a little bit. What exactly is this climate-nature connection?
Well, it's really about understanding that human activities, especially those that impacts ecosystems,
Hmm.
are a major contributor to the very greenhouse gases that we're trying to eliminate.
So it's not just about like, the cars we drive or the energy we consume, but also how we're interacting with nature itself.
Precisely. So think about it. Agriculture, forestry, and land use.
Hmm.
These sectors alone contribute about 25% of global emissions.
Wow.
That's a quarter of the whole pie.
That's a lot bigger than I realized. So
Yeah.
how does that tie back into nature being a potential solution?
That's where things get interesting. So nature, when it's healthy and thriving, acts as a massive carbon sink.
Yeah.
So think forests, wetlands, even healthy soil. They can all absorb and store carbon, effectively offsetting a portion of our emissions.
So nature's already doing us a huge favor.
Exactly. And research suggests that protecting and restoring these ecosystems
Right.
could actually provide roughly a third of the emission reductions that we need to meet our 2030 climate goals.
Wow.
Imagine the potential if
Mhm.
we truly harness this natural power.
That is incredible. So getting back to this GFANZ paper, what's their take on actually putting this into action?
Well, they lay out some practical voluntary guidance for all these financial institutions
Okay.
to start to integrate nature into their net zero plans. So it's not about forcing their hand. It's more about, providing a roadmap to kind of navigate this really complex landscape.
Okay, I like the sound of a roadmap. So
Yeah.
where does this roadmap lead us? What kind of strategies are they recommending?
Well, they highlight 4 key strategies for what they call transition financing.
Okay.
It's about funding the shift to a low-carbon world
Mm-hmm.
while simultaneously, supporting and preserving nature.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give
Hmm.
me the rundown of these strategies.
Okay, the first one is called climate solutions, and this focuses on financing activities that protect, restore, or even improve the management of ecosystems, specifically for climate mitigation.
So things like investing in large-scale reforestation projects or promoting sustainable agriculture.
Exactly. So things like planting trees, restoring wetlands, or even supporting farmers who use practices that store more carbon in the soil.
Hmm.
Then we've got aligned financing.
Okay.
And this involves backing companies that are already on a trajectory aligned with limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
So rewarding the ones who are already kind of doing the right thing.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
like it. What's next?
Next, we have aligning financing.
Okay.
And this is about nudging companies in the right direction, encouraging them to weave nature into their business models and transition towards that 1.5-degree pathway. It's kind of like offering them a helping hand to clean up their act.
Interesting approach. So it's not just about ditching those who aren't there yet, but kind of helping them get on board.
Exactly. And then finally, we've got managed phase-out. This involves strategically phasing out high-emitting assets in a way that minimizes the negative impacts and might even incorporate nature-based solutions.
Okay.
So think of it as a gradual shift towards a cleaner future using nature to ease the transition.
Now, I imagine it can't be all smooth sailing. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes even well-intentioned environmental projects can have some pretty unintended consequences.
Right.
How does the GFANZ paper address this like potential challenge of balancing climate action with nature's needs?
Well, that's a crucial point, and they don't shy away from it. They acknowledge that our actions can have both positive and negative impacts on the natural world.
Mm-hmm.
It's about understanding the nuances
Right.
and striving for solutions that maximize the benefits for both the climate and nature.
Can you give me an example of one of these like potential trade-offs?
Yeah, sure. Imagine a large-scale solar farm.
Okay.
On the surface, it's a fantastic way to reduce emissions. But what if it's built in a sensitive ecosystem disrupting local biodiversity?
Yeah.
So it's a reminder that we need to carefully consider the full impact of our actions.
So it's not always a simple win-win.
No,
There are often trade-offs to consider, and that's where things can get a little bit tricky.
absolutely. And the GFANZ report emphasizes analyzing these potential trade-offs and encouraging these financial institutions to seek out those sweet spots that deliver benefits for both the climate and nature. It's about taking a holistic view, not just focusing on a single aspect.
Okay. So how do they guide these institutions through these complex decisions? Do they provide any real-world examples to illustrate how this actually plays out?
They do, and this is where it gets really interesting. They present a fascinating case study
Okay.
involving a hypothetical institutional investor called FI Global.
Hypothetical.
Yeah.
So no naming games.
No naming names.
Okay, I like it. Tell me more about FI Global and their dilemma.
Okay, so FI Global is faced with two potential investment opportunities. One is a large-scale agroforestry project, and the other is a utility-scale solar project, both with the potential to contribute to a low-carbon future.
Sounds pretty familiar. So what are the pros and cons that they're weighing?
Well, the agroforestry project has the potential for high-carbon sequestration, restoring degraded land
Yeah.
and even boosting local economies.
Yeah.
Sounds great,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
But there are also uncertainties in quantifying those carbon benefits, and it might face some initial profitability challenges.
So a bit of a gamble, but with potentially big payoffs for both the planet and people.
Exactly. And then there's the solar project.
Rough.
It offers immediate emissions reductions,
Yeah.
which is a huge plus. But there are concerns about its potential impact on biodiversity and soil health, especially since it's located in a sensitive area.
A classic trade-off scenario. So how does FI Global approach this decision? What's their process like?
Well, they take a very systematic approach. They carefully evaluate both the risks and opportunities of each option. For the agroforestry project, they consider taking a conservative approach to estimating the carbon sequestration,
Okay.
ensuring transparency and avoiding any accusations of greenwashing.
Smart move. Transparency and accountability are so crucial in this space. So what about the solar project?
For the solar project, they explore alternative approaches. Could they shift the project's location to a less sensitive area?
Okay.
Or maybe incorporate something called agrivoltaic systems?
Agrowotic. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It might sound complex, but it's actually quite simple. Agrivoltaic systems combine solar panels with agriculture.
Oh,
So you're picturing solar panels over grazing land or even crops. It's a clever way to minimize the project's footprint while potentially even creating some new synergies.
That's really cool. I love that kind of innovative thinking. So help me connect the dots here. Why should we, the listeners, care about FI Global's hypothetical struggles?
Because just like FI Global, you might face similar dilemmas in your own life,
Okay.
whether you're considering investments,
Right.
supporting businesses, or even just making everyday choices. This case study provides a valuable framework for weighing different factors and making informed decisions that benefit both the environment and your own bottom line.
So it's like a mini MBA in sustainable decision making.
You could say
I like it. And remember, this GFANZ report is full of these valuable insights, and this case study really brings them to life. I'm loving this deep dive so far. But let's be real, most of us aren't managing multi-million-dollar investment portfolios. What are some practical, actionable steps that we can take based on all this? What can we do to make a difference?
That's a great question. It's so easy to feel overwhelmed by all this, right?
Yeah.
Like the scale of the climate crisis.
Yeah.
But I'm always reminded that even small actions can make a difference.
Absolutely. You don't have to be a financial giant to make a difference.
Okay.
There are so many things that individuals can do,
Okay.
starting with just becoming more informed.
So let's start there. What would you suggest for someone who wants to kind of dive deeper into this whole climate-nature connection?
Well, I would recommend researching some organizations in your area
Okay.
that are working on nature-based climate solutions or promoting sustainable finance.
There are so many incredible groups out there, from local conservation efforts to global initiatives. You might even be surprised by how much is happening right in your own backyard.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We often overlook the power of local action.
Yeah.
So once we've kind of identified some of these organizations that resonate with us, what's next?
Well, consider getting involved.
Yeah.
Volunteer your time, donate if you can, or just, spread the word about their work.
Yeah.
Amplifying their impact through your own networks can make a real difference.
I love that. Using our voices and our connections to support those change makers, it's about leveraging our own individual power to create this collective impact. So let's talk about something that's probably on everyone's mind. our own finances.
Yes, that's a crucial piece of the puzzle.
Mm.
Have you ever asked your bank or investment advisor about their policies on deforestation or nature-related risks?
You know what? I actually have. I've kind of just assumed that my money is being invested responsibly. But you're right. We have a responsibility to ask those tough questions and hold our financial institutions accountable.
Absolutely. Engage in those conversations.
Okay.
Your voice matters, and it can influence how these institutions make decisions.
Yeah. That's a really powerful reminder that we're not just passive consumers, you
Mhm.
know? We have agency.
Right.
And speaking of making choices, what about our everyday purchases?
Well, that's another important area where we can make a difference. Consider supporting businesses that prioritize both climate and nature in their operations.
Hmm.
Look for certifications like Fair Trade or B Corp, which indicate a commitment to sustainability.
So it's about voting with our wallets,
Exactly.
supporting companies that are actually walking the walk.
Exactly. And remember, it's an ongoing process. There's always more to learn,
Yeah.
new ways to make a difference, and innovative solutions emerging. This GFANZ report is just a starting point.
I'm curious, though, if this report is mainly focused on these large financial institutions. How much impact can individual actions really have? We're not exactly moving billions of dollars around.
Oh, that's where the power of collective action comes in. When individuals start demanding change, it creates this ripple effect that
Yeah.
influences businesses, investors, and even policymakers. Think about the movement for divestment from fossil fuels. It started with individuals raising their voices
Mhm.
and saying, we don't want our money funding climate destruction. And guess what? It's working. Major institutions are starting to listen.
That's so true. Those individual voices eventually become this chorus that's impossible to ignore.
Right. And the same can happen with nature. The
Yeah.
more people understand this connection between climate and nature, the more they're going to demand action from those in power.
Right.
We could all be part of that shift.
I'm sensing a theme here: awareness, engagement, and action. It's about staying informed, asking those tough questions, and making conscious choices in our daily lives.
You got it. And remember, this is about so much more than just reducing emissions. It's about creating a world where both people and nature can thrive.
That's a future worth fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've covered the climate-nature connection, GFANZ's recommendations, the complexities of these potential trade-offs, and even some practical steps that we can all take. Is there anything else that we should highlight from the report before we wrap up?
There's one final thought-provoking question that the report raises. Something for all of us to consider as we kind of move forward.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on us. That's a really powerful question. It really challenges us to kind of think outside the box and embrace those possibilities.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond those traditional silos,
Mhm.
tapping into collaboration and unleashing that creativity. The solutions of tomorrow might look drastically different from what we're doing today.
That's both exciting and a little bit daunting, right? Like, we're venturing into uncharted territory.
It is.
Yeah.
But that's also where the greatest opportunities lie. We're on the cusp of a paradigm shift.
Mhm.
And who knows what incredible innovations will emerge as we continue to kind of explore this uncharted territory.
That's such a good point. It's not just about implementing these existing solutions. It's about fostering this mindset of innovation and continuous improvement.
Yeah.
We need to stay curious, adaptable, and open to those new ideas.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe you listening right now will be the one to spark that next game-changing innovation.
Now, that's a thought. It's a reminder that each of us has the potential to contribute to this movement for a more sustainable future.
Exactly. Whether you're a financial expert, a nature enthusiast, or just someone who cares about the future of our planet, we all have a role to play.
I love that. This deep dive has been so insightful, and I want to thank you and, of course, our listeners for joining us on this journey of discovery.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation. We hope you'll continue to explore the intersection of climate and nature and find your own unique ways to make a difference.
Beautifully said. And with that, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the GFANZ report. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep learning about